Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another lovely stream where we work on some Xibalba concepts. Xibalba? Xibalba? No. Xibalba. What's up, Beaver? Welcome. I think I got my shit in order now. So, some pretty good stuff happened recently. I was able to get 2 new regencies conceptualized. You're looking at the most recent one, the Omindris. And there's also the... wait for it. I'll find them. The Dalventhos. So these two are sort of middle of the pack in terms of weirdness. Maybe the Dalventhos might actually go down a little bit, as in more weird. But I feel like they're easy enough to understand the concept of. We'll see what people think. Always looking for feedback in that respect, particularly with the order of all this stuff. But yeah. We got some stuff, dude. We got some shit. I also updated the Psychora a bit. Just added a little bit of stuff to the closing paragraph there. And tweaked the previously closing paragraph. So yeah, we are looking pretty good. We'll jump into our checklist, our schedule for today. So I did the Omindris draft and the Psychora wrap-up. That's what I was doing earlier today before the stream. We still have to update the Ansifii, the Rhazellium, and the Keltar. So I guess we can just start with our homies, the Ansifii. Let's check this out. So, yeah, and that also means that we only have one more regency left to make a concept for. That will bring us up to 20. It might not be where it ends. Maybe I still have more ideas. But I'll come at those ideas a little bit more, I guess you could say, organically or naturally. Because right now I've got all of this stuff that I've been thinking about. And I've been thinking about it with the intent of making another regency to get up to the mystical number 20. Now that I've gotten to that point, you know, once I finish the 20th regency's concept and push it out there, that'll probably be tomorrow or something. We'll be in a situation where we don't really need to try hard as much when it comes to that, and I can focus on really fleshing out the concepts and start working on like individual units and stuff. So that is what is ahead of us. And I think I'll be keeping the every other day stream plans, if you will, for the time being. So if you couldn't catch this one live, you can catch the next one in 2 days, and vice versa, of course. If you're watching this and you want to plan for it, that'll be on the 10th. That'll be Tuesday. All right, so let us begin with the Ansifii. These guys are the closest that we have to humans, and I still want to push them distantly enough from humans to send the signal, the message, that, oh, we've got Ansifii here. We've got these humanoids that look kind of like humans, look kind of like, you know, okay, they're a little, all right, they got that blue thing going on, but besides that, they kind of look like humans that just have like different facial structure and body structure, but similar enough, like 2 arms, 2 legs, you know, that sort of thing. Sexually dimorphic, so male and female. But the curious aspects of them, it's not just that they're meant to ease people into the setting. They're also sending the message that even the most human-like entity in the whole, like, in the whole game, they're still not exactly human. They still have their own ways about things and their own physiology that's different enough so as to give pause to anybody who might think, oh yeah, it's just another human-esque race, if you will. It's kind of unrelated, but I was in the middle of looking back at some of the other sci-fi games and IPs out there, and obviously one of the things that comes to mind is something like, for example, I mean, besides StarCraft, obviously, is the clear one that would immediately come to mind, but I'm thinking about like space operas and stuff. I'm thinking Star Wars, I'm thinking Mass Effect to some degree. I'm thinking these IPs that have a large swath of different alien races. And Star Wars and Mass Effect actually both have the similar kind of thing going, where they have a lot of bipeds, a lot of hominid type creatures, humanoid type creatures, that, for lack of a better term, it just feels a little boring that everybody's got 2 arms, 2 legs, and is kind of humanoid, and you can kind of imagine like what they are and relate to them a little bit more directly. I guess there's some argument for that in that maybe being bipedal is like a nice advantage or something. But I always liked when they veered off into really bizarre territory. Like there were the In Mass Effect, I forget what these were called, but they were like tentacle things, like pink tentacle things that were like religious or something, and tried to spread their religion. And then there was some other shit out there that was like quadrupedal, I think, but they spoke super slowly. Something like that, anyway. I'm trying to remember what any of these things were, but beyond like the sheer visual thing where it's like I'm looking at it and I'm seeing something very different than a human. I guess the concept wasn't all that like fleshed out, or at least I didn't engage with it to the point where I'm not reading wiki pages inside the game's codex or whatever, because that's not very interesting, believe it or not. So I'm not really experiencing it directly through gameplay or directly through immersion through the movie if it's like a Star Wars thing. But you get the idea. Is like when things get a little weird is that's when my interest picks up. Is like, oh, okay, now we're talking about something that did require a bit more creativity than just reskinned human. You know what I mean? So the Ansifii are, for lack of a better term, kind of more along the lines of a reskinned human, but they're also one of the only regencies, one of the only races in the game that would constitute something like that. I guess there will be a decent number of those types of things in Ember Seat, but there'll be enough members of Ember Seat that are not that as well. So we'll have to get to Ember Seat at some point later on as well, but time will tell how soon that happens. So because the Ansifii occupy a specific kind of role, we can write this down here, and we'll say these guys are meant to designed to introduce players to the setting. They will be the Regency in the tutorial campaign. As such, can't be too weird. Well, I wouldn't say can't. At least initially. So as to allow players to come to terms with the setting. However, they will diverge enough, let's say, be sufficiently divergent from humans, which will send the signal that very little in this setting is familiar. Okay, I think that's a reasonable way to sum it up. So these couple of bullet points here are important from that perspective. Well, we're not even in the Milky Way galaxy when we're playing in any of the galaxies in Xibalba. At least, obviously, they're not going to be named that because they wouldn't be named after human stuff. So I've kind of left it as ambiguous. It might not even be the same reality. I think I covered that in the primer. It's like, yeah. Tell stories that take place far from the galaxy we've come to know, with an absence of humans and no evidence that its reality is the same as our own. So I'm not saying that it isn't or is. It's more like it's so far away in space that even if it were the same reality, it might as well not be, just because you don't have like any way for them to interact logistically. Now, with all the cosmic forces in, that are active in Xibalba, you could say that, like, all right, well, there's going to be stuff that can cross the space barriers, the spatial barriers there, that are otherwise roadblocks for more conventional travel. But that doesn't really mean much if humans, like, maybe this exists before humans or after humans have, like, before humans came into existence and after they became extinct. It could be something like that. So the place and time, cosmically, is also not exactly, shall we say, consistent with our own. It's not necessarily consistent with our own. So the main reason for that is so that I was actually really interested in the challenge of trying to come up with a setting that didn't have any of the trappings of modernity, if you will. I don't know how successful I'll be at operating within those parameters, but it's kind of too late to go back now, if you know what I mean. I guess not really. I could pull out humans at any point, I guess. Just to say as like, oh, these new arrivals have come in, but for the most part, I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon. They theoretically they could be an upstart somewhere as like a cheeky reference, or they could be a member of the Ember Seed or something because they're too weak to compete. But I don't think that you would get that much value out of including them. I think the sending the signal that the closest thing you have to humans are pretty weird by themselves, and that it only gets weirder from there, is a powerful signal to the player that, oh yeah, we've got some really weird cosmic stuff that I should be expecting a lot of wacky stuff. What's up, Alexander? Okay. So I just wrote down these ideas talking about what they're going to mean to the player and how they're going to be used to introduce the setting. We'll make this a bit less clunky. We'll say bipeds instead of hominids. Sure. So we touched on their like an introduction plus a little bit of their motivation where they want to rise above, they want to ascend to some degree of higher power or whatever. It's kind of ambiguous as to how they plan to do that or if there even is a plan, but they have this like this sense of self that ends up being quite confident. We did talk about the. Let's see. Okay. We'll reorder this a little bit. I guess I didn't cover that they're actually let's see. All right. Just throw that in there because that way you know they're a sexually dimorphic species, which is fine. All right. I guess we can. Oh, okay, we have everything we need here. All right, so I'm thinking. I've moved the discussion of the feats of great strength operating heavy machinery down to the bottom because I was going to segue this into more. Well, I guess it segues pretty nicely right here into the physical prowess part. As opposed to it being like a point that's made at the beginning of the paragraph, and then maybe you haven't lost it, but it's a little bit less recent when you go on to that one. So this is fine. This makes sense. We talk a bit about a little bit more about their nature, and then move on to their technology pretty quickly. I guess that's probably fine though. Yeah, no worries there. Obviously, like I was saying earlier, I think we were talking about how soon DF could get to work on one of the models. That would obviously be. It seems like it would be fairly easy for him to slap something together early on. I think after this light mech, if we don't want to, so if we want to keep going on the Mackerel Das side of things, we would want to get a Dossier concept done, just so that we can say that like the core elements of that regency are taken care of. I guess a Dossier and a Docret, but the art style of the mech can be compared to the Docret pretty easily. So I would say Dossier is like next in line for Mackerel Das. If we wanted to pivot to another regency, it would probably make sense to do an Ansifii so that we could nail down their physiology conceptually and get a good amount of like get like a base model done from DF. Although I don't know how much sculpting he'll have to do for something like that, but organics are always a bit tougher. Considering Ansifii are meant to be the introductory regency in the first place, getting them done as soon as possible makes sense, but we're shipping with Mackerel Das, Keltar, Githroven, Ansifii, and then two others. I forget which ones those were. But I think maybe it was Ember Seat, and I wrote it down in somewhere. I wrote it down somewhere. I don't remember exactly where. I should have written it down. Way sooner. Oh, Ansifii, Psychora. Yeah, of course, Psychora. Keltar, Githroven, Mackerel Das. So we're still missing a sixth, and that could be Orlithray. That could be Ember Seat. That could be. I guess Ember Seat makes the most sense to have in the retail game, but who knows? So I will actually put that in the scratch pad here so I don't forget. Or maybe I guess we can put it in here so we can say order of release, and we'll say retail. Ansifii, Embraseat, Keltar, Githroven, Mackerel, Das, Psychora. And expansion 1, and we can figure this out later on. Since we have 20 and there's 2... Yeah, okay, so we would need 7 expansions. So that's pretty wild. Okay, so we'll figure that out later. Okay. If you don't want to draw humanoids, I guess we could just do the Dakret then. The options for that stuff are kind of limited for now because the Keltar are somewhat humanoid. The only thing that's really made up about them is their facial structure, but they still have like eyes and some sort of nose and mouth thing going on. So, and Orlithray probably aren't coming in. Yeah, they're not going to be in retail. I guess we could start to nail down some thoughts about the Embracetes and how their technology would be kind of scrappy, but in a different way to the Makroldas, so that would be interesting. We could talk about Psychora and Githrovit. So basically, I'll need to come up with some concepts, nail down some concepts about the technology of the Githrovan and the Keltar and Psychora, and start putting some of that stuff together. So I will throw that on my to-do list for just in general. So we'll say concepts for retail regency technology. Yeah, so something like that would make a lot of sense, especially since we already have some potential references that we can use. I think, yeah, we can probably do something like that. I'll just have to slap some of those together later. All right, back to Ansifii. I guess we could also look at their weapons. A lot of their weapons are going to have to look very heavy and large, and the reason for that is because they're very physically capable. So you would expect them to be able to carry around that shit pretty regularly. And then even in the vehicles or exosuits or whatever that they have, they would be expected to pull like heavy levers and shit. So like their physicality would even be there as well. Yeah, will do. That's going to be kind of interesting because it's going to mean that like I don't know how we would. I guess we wouldn't bother representing that in like the FPS or something, where you're trying to get into an Ansifii vehicle as like an Embraceite character or something, or a Dacier maybe or something. I don't know, something where it's like you don't actually have the strength to move the fucking levers. Be hilarious. But I think we would just say nah, it's fine. It works. Just ignore that particular part. But Ansifii would be carrying around like heavy ass guns and stuff, so that's definitely the case. Okay. I did want to point out here that the females would be a little bit more agile, but I think it's fine to just have that be almost like an assumption you make, and we can like elaborate on that later on. So we'll say female Ansifii are more agile than males, but what's the term? I don't remember what the term is. We'll just say obviously less strong. Okay. Let's see. I might expand this out a little bit about their weapons of war. Yeah, these guys aren't actually as lacking as I thought they would be. It's just that we don't really have that much description of their playstyle. We know that they have a lot of infantry. Let's say carrying immense firearms. Not Blue Gears of War. Yeah, I guess Sarens in Gears of War were also kind of like chunkier or whatever. Ansifii are going to be a lot more like the fucking boomers in Gears of War in terms of size and strength, and they'll be a little bit more agile than them. But if you've played Gears of War and you know the big ass enemies that I'm talking about, you'll know what I mean. We're talking like 8-9 feet into the air or whatever. Maybe more. I don't know. Maybe the average male will be like 10 feet or something. I guess that's actually the case for Space Marines. I forgot about that. But Space Marines are like engineered to be ridiculously tall. But I'm pretty sure Ansifii would still be more would have broader shoulders than them, even if they were like a little bit shorter or of the same height. Because the Ansifii are very wide, is the thing. Yeah, let me. I'll show you what a Gears of War boomer. I don't know if there's like a size comparison. Wow. I don't know what the fuck that is. That looks like fan fiction. Dude, what is that? I don't remember seeing that enemy. This is a Savage boomer because they couldn't figure out a better way to do it. Where's the... Is there like a size comparison somewhere? You can kind of see that they're towering over the other men over here. I don't know. Well, you get the idea anyway. They're like pretty fucking tall. It's kind of funny though. Those enormous boomer enemies carry around these tiny grenade launchers, and I think the reason is you're supposed to be able to use them as a human or as a Saren, whatever the fuck you are. The humans are from, well, it's not Earth, it's Sera, so they're Sarens instead of humans. But yeah, basically the idea is you can pick up their gun and use it, but like it doesn't cost you any mobility or anything. It's a normal weapon. So they walk around carrying these tiny, comparatively small things. Like, I don't know how they're even able to pull the trigger with their giant fingers. But again, I don't remember much about that. The specifics there. That's one of those logistical things that makes you go, what? What's going on here? All right. So we know that they're going to have these immense firearms. Deploy their expensive flagships and earth-shattering artillery. Yes, I think it's 1R, but yeah, Terran. It's almost like they thought of that from somewhere. I like how, so I've been doing this timekeeping thing where I write down everything that I do at like a certain time. Like before I started the stream, I wrote down like, I don't remember when I started, it was like 2 o'clock or something. So I wrote down 2 p.m. Start stream or something. I also leave notes for myself as like, this is what I like, just some thoughts that I had about like how productive I was or whatever per day. And one of them is should have slept for a day that I did not sleep very well. That's a classic note. I really learned from that. So I'm thinking at this point, what do we need to know about the Ansifii that we don't currently? We talk about infighting. This is a really reasonable wrap-up. It's a bit sparse, but it's a reasonable wrap-up, and it does cover some of the things that I like to try to do in the wrap-ups, or talk about, like, public relations, basically, like, inter-regency relations, as well as intra-regency relations, so how the regency deals with infighting. Does infighting happen? And, I mean, the answer, it kind of has to be yes, because in multiplayer, you can fight against your own regency. But I guess in campaign, it wouldn't necessarily have to be that way. But there has to be some clever way where you can justify infighting and civil conflict. It's to the point where, like, how else would you explain the multiplayer or something? So, like, most of the time that can be like, oh, Rhazellium control nodes have been compromised or something like that. By they've been hacked. What's up, Veek? Something like that could be the case, but you get the idea. So yeah, I think we've tweaked the Ansifii. We still need some more information about these guys. The infighting stuff is good. Valuable resources and yada yada. I guess we could talk about how they are perceived by many of which perceive the can't call them upstarts because upstarts are their own thing. We'll say the young race as ignorant and foolish. So we're establishing that like they are kind of looked down upon by the other regencies. Let's say some instead of many, because others will side with them. Though other regencies have, we'll say though other factions within the cosmos have allied themselves with the Ansifii, and we'll tell. The hominids. Expansive. Yeah, okay, that's fine. No, I don't think I've done that for any regency though. I guess I've done that for the Githrovan. I talked about their art and science and stuff. I mean, the most of the time I just hint at that based on like what their thought process is on some of that stuff. A lot of the regencies here don't actually have societies or civilizations in the conventional sense. Like the Rhazellium are obviously like they don't need art or science; they're just here to replicate. The most recent edition, the Omindris, doesn't appear to have much of a society anymore. At some point, the Deridris did. But since, for some time anyway, their union with the Ominder hasn't made any sort of connection to conventional civilization. And it's actually kind of ambiguous as to what even their motivation is. They're another regency kind of like the Orlithrae, where you can try to communicate with them. I guess the Rhazellium would be a better fit here. You can try to communicate with them, but like the Orlithrae, their motive is not 100% certain. And they seem to just... They have their own guiding principle. There's some consistency to them and what they do. Just like with the Orlithrae, like they walk through and consume everything. The Omindris walk through and just defeat the most power. They do battle with the most powerful enemies in a certain sector. But they don't really seem to, like, they don't communicate much. They don't tell you why they're doing it. They just do it. So they're a little bit puzzling to a lot of the other regencies. Yeah, I think the Ansifii would, in general, encourage that sort of thing. They are split into separate nations, so that could be something that we discuss. Ansifii nations are expansionist and self-affirmed. Leaders always certain for their origins. Blah blah blah. Yeah, so I guess I could throw in some information about their engineering departments and whatnot. Let's see. I'll say with the bulk of the Ansifii. We'll say often say politics. I'll probably need to tweak this sentence a bit. Yeah, okay. I've used with too much here. Yeah, the trouble is that's a lot of that is very much like background lore and whatnot, which is certainly something I should be developing, but it matters a little bit less currently when we're still trying to nail down gameplay specifics. Really, the question is, have I developed enough of the gameplay? Like, is it to the point where I actually don't need to explain too much? Because Ansifii are familiar, they are physical, they are taking fairly conventional approaches to warfare compared to what we understand from other sci-fi games, from other settings, from modern day. So you almost don't need that much explanation for a lot of what they do. The key things that are important to mention are like the infantry dominating the military and the arsenal, you could say. So there we go. We've elaborated a little bit on the frontal nature of them and also just cleaned that up a little bit. Yeah, that's right. The factions and regencies and stuff, inter-regency stuff is a little bit vague right now. I probably have to rewrite a lot of the wrap-up paragraph. Use their physical prowess. Yeah, this is where I was talking about like militaries. The arsenal. Okay. I guess we haven't touched on their tech progression or their construction methods. That could be another thing that we talk about, like how they actually um, deploy their arsenal. Okay, now we've touched a bit more on that. If anybody in the chat has any thoughts on some of the new concepts, I didn't really touch too much on them yet, but feel free to slap them together. Feel free to let me know what you think. I'm pretty happy with how both the Delventhos and the Omindris came together. I won't lie, the Omindris took a little bit longer to really iron out the main ideas, but they came together in a way that felt quite thematic, to be honest. By Ace, you mean like the Prime stuff? Psychora has some information on that. I think a lot of the Regencies have some information on that. But I certainly could add more information on like specifically what makes them the most powerful or whatever. Some of them have more than others. If you go to Nadarasatha, there's the Antithraz, for example. Omindris actually has a lot of specific examples of technology. Well, not a lot. There's a couple specific examples of large transports called Omindaroa. And then there's also the Omindiron. Although there'll probably be Omindiron. It's not really meant to be iron, but that was just how the word came to be. That are actually the construction workers, basically. Yeah, there's discussions of some of those in a couple of different places. I think, for example, if you look at the going to the Psychora specifically, there's like discussions of the most impressive of Psychoran savants are armed with the power to shift the crusts and worlds and transpose slices of the local star. I should say stars. But even less experienced mystics can rearrange armies and enhance projectiles by using dimensional rifts. So a little bit of discussion there. The Thruk have some discussion where, yeah, the most fearsome Thruk entities are capable of collapsing sinkholes, raising mountains from flat crust, and even tearing the surface asunder with violent quakes. So yeah, while I'm sure I could expand a little bit more on a lot of those ideas, there are at least some of them that have discussions of like their key technology. But yeah, a good shout as a way to try to sum up the most important aspects of their like final tiers of technology. Because in a roundabout way, these descriptions, as much as they are useful for me developing the concepts of the regencies, they're also almost going to be leveraged as like somewhat of an advertisement for like why you might want to play as this regency, you know? The things you can expect, and also why you might want to fear this regency, and why you should beware it in the battlefield. So, yeah, it's serving many purposes, but we're getting there. Okay. Let's see here. So I'll say, besides that, we have to discuss a couple of other things. There you go. I've actually heard some people pronounce iron as iron. I wonder why that is. I guess it's because it looks like it's supposed to be iron. It seems like it's also sometimes specifically a European thing. I don't know. Don't know about that one. Like I've heard iron cross, for example. It's just like, I don't know if you lost the memo. Maybe it is actually just a regional thing, though. Ironic. Okay. So I wanted to talk about how they deploy. It's fairly straightforward. Depth sight, by the way. Despite, actually. See you later, homie. Yeah, Vic, I was thinking that I need to conceptualize a file structure. Well, I guess we just need to move Cosmonarchy's current stuff to a separate link for Cosmonarchy Brood War, so that we can still have that side of it, but it would probably be like Cosmonarchy -BW, and then the main Cosmonarchy page would link to that, but also have information about specifically about this stuff. So, yeah, we're gonna need to do that sooner rather than later, and then I can start working on tech tree pages. And I can move the. Well, I guess the Regency should stay in the Xibalba section, but their tech trees. It's kind of troubling, isn't it? Because the tech trees are not unique to one game. Like they're gonna have all the same units and tech paths and mechanics, no matter what game you're playing. So I don't know. Actually, Vic, we have to talk a little bit. Maybe you'll have time after my stream. We can talk about this. The whole concept of releasing the game as one entity on for platforms like Steam, and then like you launch, something like that. I don't know. Maybe you could, maybe we could release the Xibalba launcher or the Antikythera launcher or something as a separate piece of software that you would then you could purchase the different games through it if we wanted to go the different game route, and also acquire. I mean, the thing is, like, the expansion packs would still be relevant to all titles. You wouldn't have to pay more for like an expansion pack you wouldn't have to pay twice for an expansion pack if you wanted to play both Dreamhold and Cosmonarchy as an example. So yeah, we gotta figure out all those things and come to an agreement, because we first thought they were just going to be separate games, and then we thought, well, they should be the same game because they're the same binary, and then the FPS entered into the mix from a conceptual standpoint, and now we're staring down the barrel of releasing 3 games that have more content in each one of them than the average $60 AAA game, and pricing all 3 of those games at $30, not each, just $30, which doesn't really make sense and is a massive undercut from what we should be doing. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it would make sense to price each individual game at $30, to be honest, or maybe at least call like Cosmonarchy being that price, and then maybe Dreamhold is less or something. But the goal is to have each one of those be their own game in terms of the amount of content that you get. So I don't know that it makes sense. Yeah, that's somebody spending a lot of time. There you go. Hopefully they lose interest in 5 minutes. Hilarious, TBH. What do you mean by initially proposed? So the reason why I was pricing it at 30 in the first place has nothing to do with us being independent developers. It's mostly because we're operating in a current environment where you spend less money, so you spend more money than the value that you get. So a $60 game does not have the value that $60 should, or not should, would buy in another industry. If you spend 60 bucks on any other entertainment product, you're bound to get way more money's worth on average. And if you don't get your money's worth, then you are not criticized for sharing that reality with other people as a review or general thoughts. But in the games industry, that's completely different. So you get the idea. That doesn't mean that we should price our games lower than they're actually worth, though. That's the trouble. Is I want to combat the premise that when you pay money for a game, you're actually getting fucked as a consumer. Well, I guess they're just making new accounts or something. All right, let's put this in. We'll see how that looks. Okay. Okay. That I can remove. Oh, it's definitely a little bit more sizable. Okay. We will take a quick break. I gotta use the bathroom and get some more water. When I come back, we are targeting. Let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, mo here at this point. What was my next target anyway? I know I wanted to update the Rhazellium at some point. But I could also do Keltar. I guess I'll decide later on. For now, I'll move over to the Rhazellium and shall return in a moment. Derby? I've returned. Owned. Okay, we've got the Rhazellium up next. Obviously, I need to spend a bit of time taking a look at this. I guess we could maybe combine these two. I don't know. This scrap one is like pretty important, so I'll probably just expand upon this second paragraph. When I expand upon the first one, it's probably going to be talking a bit about their what the actual task is. I mean, the runaway task is kind of implied, where they just need to convert some of this stuff. But yeah, no, we'll have to wait and see. Oh, I guess we already talked about the scrap part. Yeah, okay, so we probably don't need to expand this too much then. Yeah, it only filters by name instead of by account. But it's probably because it can't access the specific data there. Well, I don't know what the YouTube API has. I know it just changes every now and then, which breaks restream functionality until they fix it. Well, yeah, it is pretty pathetic, but if you feed into it in any capacity, they're just going to continue doing it, so. Better to just quickly dismiss them and move back on to being productive. If it really got that bad, I would just turn the chat off on stream and check in occasionally. Although I guess one really obvious way to fix this, isn't it? There you go. No, now it's just going to be really obvious when when a stupid idiot moron clone is trying to type using your username. Yeah. It doesn't show up in Restream differently, but then you can also just smash somebody who's being an idiot anyway. I think you can actually get Restream to display chats from a specific Discord channel, which is pretty funny. If we went that route, that might, assuming these dev streams ever take off to a ridiculous degree, because like we're developing like levels or whatever after the game's already released and people are who are interested are checking it out. That kind of stuff would be pretty. What do you call it? Yeah, that kind of stuff would be pretty consistently useful, I guess, because assuming the chats get to a ridiculous saturation, then they can they basically would have to talk to themselves while I only look at the Discord chat or something. I don't know. That would be an interesting issue to resolve, but not one that I have to worry about right now, thankfully. I suppose lingering back on that pricing thing, though, people have already mentioned that based on the content that is going to be available, a $30 price tag for even one of the games seems a bit light. I don't think we'll go above that, but I think the idea of the whole point of like pricing the game fairly is because we want to give people value for their dollar. And you can equate that based on like hours of time spent in content. But the reason why that's a corrupted metric in the modern day is that so much content is just grind or is not respectful of your time. It's not spent in gameplay. It's spent watching a cutscene or something like that. Where even if the cutscene is good, which it never is, it's still not gameplay. So it's content of a different kind, but it's still not really what you're after. So I think when we like if you sat down and said, okay, I'm going to get an hour's worth of content for every dollar that I spend, that would be a fair price for most people, for most people's minds. That would probably be a very, like, almost too fair a price in some cases. And that's only the single player content we're talking about. There's all the extraneous content, the co op missions, the melee multiplayer, the editor that lets you make your own content. So, realistically speaking, the players that are going to be more enthusiasts, more like even custom developers or whatever, those kinds of people are going to be they're getting way more value than the person who just plays the single player content and then moves on to the next game. But even those people who only are interested in playing the single player content, although I imagine that'll be a very small quantity, even those people will be still getting value for their dollar. And I think that's fine to say. The thing is, like, we're going to be releasing. You're actually going to get like 2x the value that you got retail with the expansion packs if we release them at $5. And it's, again, 2x as it pertains to Cosmonarchy specifically. When you factor in the stuff you get in Dreamhold or the stuff you get in the FPS, that's also pretty notable there. Well, yeah, exactly, Veek. I mean, the thing is, like, if you just decide to go through and say, we've got, I don't know, say that you've got a situation where you're dealing with an 8-hour game, but you spent $60 on it. I still kind of feel like that conversion is not great. But if it's really high quality 8 hours, then maybe there is something to be said about that. If it's a replayable 8 hours, what with the first run being high quality and subsequent runs being possible to still find value in, okay, you can start to see where you would make up the distance. But most games don't have high value replayable content, and I just don't even see really what the point is of pricing a game at that high value or that high dollar amount. Okay, reasonable. Reasonable content. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so we've touched a lot on the scrap here in this description. We've touched a lot on that mechanic and how they're built around that. We haven't really touched on how they build, how they progress through the tech tree, and yeah, okay. So in the opening paragraph, we need to explain a bit more about what the goal is, where they were given a task to generate resources for their for a specific reason, or generate. Yeah, they're basically given a goal to self-perpetuate. So, I guess we can just say self-replication. Okay. Fine. Suitable. So the trouble I'm having here is that this segues pretty well into the scrap stuff, but I feel like the scrap stuff, as much as it is important for the Regency, is secondary to how they're actually built. Like, maybe I can segue out of it with this sort of stuff. Pretty nice. Big fans of having selection. I actually should pull that stuff. Oops. That's not what I wanted to start. Starting a much worse program. I'll quickly use this digression to show off what we've got going on here. We have individual unit selection. We have control click for... Oh, the walk cycle's busted on these. I noticed patrol... Oh, patrol does work. Okay. I must have been hitting the wrong key earlier. Oh, we got some units. Looks like you also added the rules for selecting... only units. But yeah, we already got all this shit. Pretty nice. I can try connecting to you. I'll have to start Radman for that one, homie. And I can't escape the game, so I cannot try to connect you. You? Some nice lag, TBH. Yeah, I don't think any of my inputs are being synced because I can't actually select multiple units or any unit, actually. Oh, okay. I didn't know Alt did that. Yeah, so I can see you controlling stuff, but I can't control stuff. I think it's because I'm a separate player. What's up, Kian? Nice spinning. Also, when I alt tab, the game freezes, but I don't know if it freezes for you too. Oh no. It's only when I hold alt. But when I click out... Oh wait. Wait, what the fuck? Oh, I have to hold alt at all times, not just when... You should make it so that I only have to hold alt when they... What a ridiculous experience. I'm red, apparently. Am I? I don't know, man. Yeah, I guess so. This is pretty rough, not gonna lie. Not only am I lagging, but I can't even leave my game. Jesus Christ. Yeah, good luck selecting anything. Oh my goodness. At least I have all my Ahmeds. Yeah, I don't think your turn rate stuff worked. Sup, bitch? Suck my Ahmed. Alright, well. I am still red, even though I disconnected. It's pretty funny. Well, maybe you can figure out what's going on with the networking stuff, but at least we have selection. Owned. What's up with you, Kian? Alright, what are we doing here? Well, I imagine 1 tick latency would be basically nothing, but maybe I'm just misunderstanding. Well, our connection, our MS is like 120 or something. I don't know. You can't ping me now because I'm offline, but I'll go online so you can ping me. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Vik made harvest orders, but we can't order them yet, so we haven't been able to test them. But theoretically, it's possible to harvest resources. Isn't it possible for you to write something that will? I mean, obviously it's possible, but I guess this should be the next thing for networking specifically is being able to get um, the highest ping between players and set the tick rate to something that would be commensurate to that. Oh my god. The classic. Message deleted by the Google moderator team. Get fucking owned, idiot. Bye. That might be the first good thing Google's done in their entire existence as a company. To be honest, it serves whoever that fucking pathetic loser is right to get owned by Google. Bye. I wonder if it's Chris. In that case, I hope his main account got banned too. Bye. No, I'm just kidding. Pretty sure that guy's too busy editing fucking pranks. Yeah, I disabled thread creation outside of the concept art section because it's not actually that useful. I can't even see them on Ripcord. So It doesn't even show up yet because the guy hasn't released an update. I actually don't know what is going on with that. If I go to Ripcord Development, Home. I don't even think there's a thread support in Discord. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, it's still open, and with no information on how soon it'll be added. So I don't know. Advanced forms mandate increasing amounts of raw materials. All right, so we've touched a bit on their tech up aspect. I'm still not sure about central structures being embedded by units. I was thinking that maybe the central structure, well, yeah, okay, we'll just say central structures are called down. The limited range aspect is a bit wonky, and I think we will just remove it for now. But I'm not sure how that will work out. I'm not sure what you mean exactly. The only thing contextual about making a right click on a unit order, the only thing that makes it contextual is the fact that you don't have a consistent response, basically. But right-clicking an enemy unit should attack the unit, should give you an order to attack the unit. Because what you get out of that is an instant ability to focus without focus fire without needing to use the other side of the keyboard, or without needing to use the keyboard at all, really. A basic attack is not what we need to be worried about automating. Now, should you follow a unit with a right click? No, because I think right clicking should be attack unit. It doesn't need to only attack an enemy, so you right click to attack your own units. I don't really see the problem with that. It just makes it a consistent attack unit order, in addition to whatever the keyboard shortcut is for attack. So that would be what I would do. And then, yeah, follow unit would be its own unique order, which could be tasked on enemy units as well. I don't really see a problem with that. One thing that we're going to have to figure out about is, do we make units, like when you issue an attack move, in Brood War, there's a level of decision making that is imparted onto the unit itself, where the unit will attack the first thing that enters into its aggro range. It'll move to attack the first thing that enters into its aggro range. It will also respond to being attacked, which means if you see a building that doesn't have a weapon, and you start to move to attack that, and then you get attacked by something, you'll change targets. And that changing of targets is really important for units to not be, for attack moves to not be a chore, basically. So we have to figure out how we're resolving that, if we're making any changes to the Brood War formula in that respect. I think Brood War does some weird shit where it has some like automatic safeguard. I mean, I guess I can just test this. So if I attack move, well, they're not really doing a great job of kiting, are they? We'll try that one again. So I'm trying to test if I attack move and get an attack, and this guy kites away, which he didn't kite away because he's an idiot. Oh my god. Okay, I have to test this with my own units because these guys don't know how to kite. But I don't know if AI have a different order in this case, so whatever. Where is this guy? Yeah. I think this is what happens to AI units, but not to player units. I can't believe he failed to kill 3 Mavericks. That's pretty embarrassing. It doesn't make the button do completely different things. You are issuing an order targeting targeting different things, which naturally means you would do that. I mean, that happens with all of the abilities, so, or all of the orders. Not all of them. Significant number of the orders. If you issue order targeting masked ground, you don't always do the same thing as if you target revealed ground. If you issue order targeting a unit with like a cast spell, for example, you don't target the unit's terrain, the terrain below the unit. You target the unit, which means if the unit moves, you follow it, which is obviously intuitive and natural, and that's what we will go with. But that is a different order than targeting the ground, obviously. So that does completely different things as well. That's what I meant earlier when we were talking in DMs about this. You can't have an explicit design ethic that guarantees value and where we want to go, the desired outcome, without having a lot of collateral damage along the way. So attack move is a different order than attack unit anyway. I don't know, like it's even a different order in the game currently, I'm pretty sure. Or at the very least, it feels like it. I think if we remove the ability to do basic things with the right click, we are going to get a lot of flack for that. And it's not really something that you can massively adapt to either. Because suddenly you're using. So, like, people are using their keyboard with completely different. Like, in completely different ways, basically. So, it basically is an entirely separate control scheme, which to me feels more like something we could invest time into developing for people who want that, but not something that makes any sense to force on people. So yeah, I don't know. Don't know about that one. We will have to think about it and iterate on it over time. Well, what I'm getting at is the fact that if you change it so that the order targets not the unit but the position of the unit at the time of the order, you are also changing everything related to spellcasting, and you're making it so that you no longer are able to automatically track the target. Maybe that's fine, and maybe that's even desirable because it removes the that element of automation. But it's not as simple as it removing automation equals good in this case, because that central design ethic would result in, obviously, as we both came to the conclusion earlier, it would result in like a complete evaporation of the ability to function at scale. So We have to have some deference for that when we discuss these kinds of things. And on some level, which is going to be unsatisfying to the engineer's mind, you have to accept that some things that break a mold of a specific design ethic are going to be necessary. Some exceptions are going to be necessary for the game to feel right and for players to be able to spend time on skill testing and things. The problem is that the way I phrased it is the same exact way as the slippery slope comes into play for general RTS design, where they talk about an F2 button to select the whole army because managing control groups individually and selecting units is not skillful or some shit. But the difficulty is, like, what defines skillful depends on what you are designing your game around. And that is the central design ethic, is what do we want to test for in our format? What do we want to test for as far as player skill goes? I would argue that a large part of it has nothing to do with really what the UI is. It's the plan of the player to construct a composition that will defeat their opponent and to deploy them in such a way, and that's where the physical execution comes into play, is the deployment of that plan, the movement of armies, the base layouts, and the placement of structures and of units to accept enemy fire, to support allies, to conquer their opponents. That's where the skill actually comes in. It's equal parts, in my estimation, mechanical and conceptual, strategical. So, considering the scale we're going for, there's going to be some stuff that will, for lack of a better term, be automated that we can't really avoid. We can't really dispense with, because to do so would be to force players to deal with basically everything at scale. Our RTS is all about scale. Our RTS is even more so about scale than any other RTS has ever been. And as a result of that alone, we are going to need some sort of automation. Otherwise, the game will not be playable, for lack of a better term. Now, the question is, are there going to be some mechanics in the game that we plan that need to be entirely automated, or need such an automation, such a level of automation, so as to the player does not interact with the system anymore? And if that's the case, then the system needs to be redesigned or removed, obviously, because the whole point is that the player interacts with it. Now, the player issuing an order is pretty low level, and they're going to be doing that thousands, if not millions of times per game. So you've got to keep that in mind when you quantify, like, what needs to be automated or whatever. So it is a bit of a philosophical problem, but it is also one that we have to solve at a very low level. Otherwise, we'll just have virtually no hope of going farther with the concept. So it is something that we need to handle pretty soon, I suppose, with some expediency. So we could talk a little bit more about that over a call or something later, because right now I'm focusing on other things, and if I keep talking about it, I'll just say a bunch of shit that you'll then have to spend time trying to respond to, which won't get us anywhere because we're not talking using the same mediums. Okay. It's definitely a solvable problem. It is just going to require some thinking, some consideration, a lot of testing, probably. There are certain things that I also have to admit my own personal biases against. One of those things being Smart Rally. But it might come to pass that if you're going to be managing 10 bases, it's ridiculous to have, you know, the issue where you have to look at your base every time to order your workers to harvest. I don't know. That will require some testing in and of itself. The question comes down to, is that something where, like I never want automation to scale with, like, the tech tree or something. Like, I don't want it to be like, well, tier 5 workers, part of what they bring with their advanced technology is the knowledge that they should be harvesting automatically. Like, that's obviously really laughable. But so it has to be a consistent system throughout the whole way. Either all of it is automated in the sense of issuing a contextual rally order, or none of it is. And then obviously, in an ideal world, the design ethic that leads you to the oasis of not a dumb rally or smart rally, wherever we end up, would also extend to other contextual orders or other orders in general. But it's not always going to fit in that cleanly. With so many different things operating, it's kind of fallacious to even equate all of those systems, to be honest. But that's something that we'll tackle later on. I think the reason why Smart Rally was condemnable in a lot of other games doesn't really apply to the scale that we're going for in Cosmonarchy, virtually entirely because of the core element of the game being so scaled up. And like in StarCraft 2, you never needed to look at your base, because once you set up your base and applied your production facilities to control groups, and I guess your upgrade structures as well, you had the Smart Rally. And I mean, the only reason you ever needed to look at your base was macro mechanics, and they briefly removed those in, I think, a Legacy of the Void beta or something, and made them automatic. And then you never needed to look at your base ever again in the mid game or whatever. Now, I don't think that will ever happen in Cosmonarchy, because you're always going to need to look at your base, because your base is going to be much larger. Your base area is going to be much larger. You're going to be always expanding. It's never going to get to a point where you're not expanding, unless you're starved out of expansions, which is going to be pretty bad. You're always going to be building new structures. There's a decent amount of, a large portion of the game flow is that repetition of expanding your base area, adding more production facilities, teching up, unlocking more different types of units and whatnot. And also responding to threats and whatever, like the level design is going to facilitate that to some degree. But because of that scaled up nature, I think you're going to have other reasons to look at your base. And there's going to be some times where you manage your economy. Like, one thing that we might want to stress in our designs, and something that I've already thought makes a lot of sense. Yeah, exactly. One thing that makes a lot of sense, to me anyway, is the idea that resource nodes are not limited in terms of how many workers can harvest from them simultaneously, which is obviously a stark contrast to Brood War, where you could only have one worker harvesting from one mineral field at a time. The reason why this is not that imbalanced is because if you only harvest from the close mineral fields, or rather magmite fields, the resource nodes that you have at your disposal, the ones that are closest, then those ones get expired as soon as possible, and then you have asynchronous expiration dates on all your resources, which naturally means that there has to be a little bit of micromanagement there. So you are going to need to manage your economy, your workers, your harvesting efforts. So, that's irrespective of rallying. You're going to need to manage that. So it almost feels like maybe it's fine to have that quote-unquote smart rally aspect, where the auto-harvesting on training, the harvest order, the contextual order on training. Now, the other thing we could do to alleviate this from a design perspective is we could set a default order to the unit, to the command, to the, the production facility. So a default order for worker production would probably be harvest, move to and harvest. And then there would be a move to, an attack to, or what, maybe some other shit. Now, you can also argue that that is in and of itself automation, because you're automating the decision to issue an order to a unit when it's trained. But when you have so many fucking units being trained every game, where it's hundreds of thousands of units are being trained, maybe tens of thousands per player, but hundreds of thousands overall, is it really that skill testing to say, yeah, you had to be you had to have a camera hockey there so you could immediately dash to there when a unit was built and order them? Because if you make that argument, then that argument would also extend to rally, in my opinion, as well. The whole concept of a rally point. So these are things that we have to figure out. No, smart casting actually messes with unit selection. It's not imparting some initial order when a unit is created. Smart casting is literally saying, despite the fact that you have 5 High Templars selected, I'm going to only order Psystorm from one of them, which is what happens in StarCraft 2. Whereas that doesn't like make any fucking sense, obviously. Oh, why? Why doesn't this guy just get a life? I'm so confused. Surely there's more interesting things to do on the internet than distract from development of actually good games. You could distract development from terrible games. You could go talk to those people over at the Immortals Discord server. I guess Sunset already does that enough, but if you needed to help him, maybe you could call in some backup for him. All right, I think this will do it for our initial work on the Rhazellium, and I will jump ahead into... Oh, they're right down here. I actually kind of forget what I was supposed to do next. Did I... Oh, what the fuck? Infrastructure, by the way. Okay. What was next? Ah, Keltar. Yeah, these homies need some updates, don't they? Well, I think I'll do this off stream. I have to get some food, and no need to eat that on stream, huh? But you can check back in a little while, and I'll have an update for this. And I guess I'll probably do some other work on a couple of other things. Not only do we have more regencies that are in need of updating, but I still have to work on the Avote, which are going to be the final-ish, for now, potentially, regency that I'm going to draft concepts for. Once those guys are in, it'll just be open season for updating and fashioning tech trees for the other regencies. I will probably spend a long amount of time specifically focusing on the retail regencies, the ones that are planned for retail. So I suppose, even though I've already done this, and I think, oh yeah, it's actually in the regencies section. Order of release. So I know that the Ansifii, Embraceet, Keltar, Githrovan, Makroldas, and Psychora are all in a rough order of release. I think right now the Githrovans, the Ansifii, and the Makroldas are probably in the best positions. I guess Psychora as well. But all of them are going to need additional content, additional concepts. Embraceet most notably, and I think Makroldas are right behind them in terms of what are required. But, oh, and Keltar, obviously. But I'm going to do them later today, so I'm not really that concerned by them. I will probably also draft the prospective titles and pairings for each expansion fairly soon, where I'll also document like what kinds of things are planned in those expansions, and if we can get some sort of unifying thought process behind, in addition to what regencies are going to be there, what the other elements of the expansions are going to look like. I suppose initially I could just mention that Orla Thray will almost certainly be in the first expansion, which probably means that Rhazellium can be in the next, or can be in the same thing. It's either Rhazellium or Gadamemter, and I feel like Gadamemter is probably going to be a lot later. It's probably going to be like expansion 3 or 4 or something. So yeah, I think I'll say Rhazellium. And then Solar Throne would come next. I guess it could be Orla Thray and Solar Throne. And Rhazellium and Gadamemter could come together. So there is that as an option. But Rhazellium are a fairly basic concept, so I feel like maybe adding them in an expansion doesn't make as much sense. But I don't know. We'll see how that works out over time. So Solar Throne would definitely be at least in expansion 2 if they weren't in the first one, which would put... let's see. Who else would even come along with them? Yeah, this is the part where I'm not 100% sure where we would go from there. I know that Katithron and Kolopoazos are going to be together, and they would probably come along with the Continuum game mode. So that would be something that we would have to consider. That's probably like expansion 4. Maybe that would be 5, actually, because this would be... Yeah, that is also possible. Really depends on what we actually want to deploy. Okay. That's the rough look for now. We'll see how, what changes about this in general. There you go. That's it. I'm out of here. Thanks for hanging, and we'll be back in 2 days, so see me then.